the fucking emotion I'm going through right now, that means this shit is serious, okay? That means me and this motherfucker's not vibing right now. That's what that shit means, okay?
You got something on your chest?
I got something. That's why the fuck
Do you want some of me?
I
The
want
guy's
some.
got a cannon.
What do you want some?
I want some.
You want some bad enough, then you come get some. Wait.
Two Miami cops have to track down $100 million worth of heroin and not kill each other along the way. This week, special guest Aaron Neuman joins us to talk about what this movie has in common with Baywatch, scenes that are literally high octane, and what Michael Bay completists, if there are any, should really be doing with their time. Then we find out if Bad Boys stands the test of time.
Test of time, James and Alan have to say, do the movies you love still hold up today? James says gladiator with a glut, Alan says as a father blah blah. It's the test of time, James and Alan have to say, do the movies you love still hold up today? Test of time, James and Alan have to say, do the movies you love still hold up today?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Test of Time podcast. My name is Alan Noah, and joining me is
James Brief, and welcome to the podcast, a new guest, our friend of the podcast, friend of Nick's Marathon, our friend Aaron Neuman.
Hey, Aaron.
Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be here.
So we're going to be talking about Bad Boys this week in honor of the new Bad Boys movie, Bad Boys for Life.
Bad Boys.
Right. We'll sing the song. But before we get into Bad Boys, we need to talk about Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. Full spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, but we've all seen it. So, Aaron, as our special guest, what were your thoughts on Episode 9?
I thought it was really good. I was looking for another twist rather than him coming, Ren coming back over to the goods, the Force and going away from the dark side. I wanted to see him come around and be like, oh, just kidding. Rack, just like full on lightsaber right through Rey and then bring it on.
What a bummer of an ending, Aaron.
Yeah, I was looking for some darkness because I actually really liked the last one.
The Last Jedi?
Yeah, and I don't know, I just thought it would have been a good twist there. But obviously, they need to make money. It needs to be a happy film in the end. Everyone needs to come out to a good conclusion that wraps everything up, and the studio couldn't do that. I'm sure there was back and forth where they could bring it, but they need to make everyone leave on a happy note at the end of this film, especially since today, everyone sees it. All the kids see it. You got to keep it lighthearted in the end.
I think you nailed something there right there, where you said, I kind of would have wanted whatever your particular Aaron Neuman twist was, which I say because I think every single person had exactly what they wanted Snoke to be and Rey's origin to be, or what they didn't want it to be, and what they wanted Hux to be, and Poe Dameron, and everyone had their opinions, and then everyone made their own storylines. But if there's one thing that I think we agree was great on it, I'll bet you I can get you to say it with me at the same time.
Okay.
Oh, so, I thought there was going to be one thing that was indisputably fantastic about the movie.
Okay, I'm not sure that we're on the same page, but all right, we'll say it at the same time.
2, 3.
C-3PO.
Okay.
No, all right.
Okay.
I will agree with you, though. The score was amazing.
Great.
I have listened to it on Spotify, independently of watching the movie, just at work, and it's a great soundtrack.
And I will say with you also that I think C-3PO, in one scene in particular you're probably talking about, it was a wonderful scene.
No, the entire movie, I thought C-3PO, everything he did, every line he had, I thought was great.
I agree with you there. I think his storyline was good. I think Kylo Ren was a very interesting character. Poe Dameron, I liked the character. I can't really remember anything he did in this film, to be honest.
They didn't give him that much of an arc, which was a shame because they really gave him an arc in episode 8. And then his storyline in this movie was his backstory. And also he ends up as the leader of the resistance, which is pretty much where they left him in episode 8 anyway.
Yeah, I think there was another thing I liked about it is that it fixed for me some of the problems that The Last Jedi had. It did something exactly I predicted. It just needed one line where someone said, "Oh, why don't we just fire a hyperspace thing at this new place like Holdo did?"
Yeah, he said,
And
why don't we do the Holdo maneuver?
Exactly. So, and they just put a throwaway line. They didn't explain it, but they go, "Oh, no, that's 1 in a million." Great. I like that they fixed that.
You don't feel like they did too much fixing of episode 8? Because I do. I just want to go to what I said during our Return of the Jedi episode about what I wanted for episode 9. And the two things I said I didn't want to happen were for them to retcon Rey's parentage and that I didn't want there to be Death Stars. There were both. Both things happened. And I was like, God damn it.
Hey, what's wrong with the Death Star?
Yeah, and didn't I say as a joke, they're going to have a Death Star Ray on every TIE fighter?
Did you?
I thought I did.
They brought it all together as showing the demise of the Death Star. That was nice to see that. I mean, I think it's unrealistic that all of a sudden they go through it and all of a sudden a random door still has power, opens up and leads them to this one navigational artifact that lets her find, the Sith, what the hell do they call it?
Exegol.
I mean, realistically, that's the one thing that survives, and that doorway to that specific area still operates, so many years later.
You mean on the Death Star?
Yeah.
That's a very fair point. I guess first we should just talk about Rey being a Palpatine. I don't love that decision. I gotta be honest. I thought it was really cool and really interesting in episode 8 when they said that her parents were nobodies. And you can't just save that by saying, oh, her parents were nobodies, but her grandfather was the most evil man the galaxy ever saw. Well, then, in that case, her dad was not nobody. He was the Emperor's son. Not to mention the fact that in 6 movies, we never heard that Palpatine had a wife or a girlfriend or anything. Like, that never once came up. In extended universe stuff, nothing.
You're correct, Al. And I think that leads me to what my main problem with this, the entire trilogy here. There were very dueling directors here, and there was no plan.
Absolutely.
If they had done that throne room scene from the first Death Star, that should have been in episode 7. You find that Wayfinder. I thought that was kind of neat, seeing the crash-landed Death Star. I thought that was pretty cool. But why was this in episode 9? And, you had Snoke and Rose, and that Benicio del Toro character, and Captain Phasma. These weren't bad characters. They just were thrown in and thrown out, and I understand that it doesn't have to all be resolved in the 3rd movie, but the parentage, it could have even been like a post-credits scene, and it could have been Snoke walks over and kneels on a platform just like in episode 5, and he's talking to his master, and all we hear at the end of episode 7 is, ah, ha, 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 ha. She is important. She's not important. Yes, she is important. Why did they tease us like that? I didn't get it. Over the course of 3 different movies, like teasing us over one movie, that makes sense. Like it's a twist.
I think you hit the nail on the head, James, when you said that they didn't really have an overarching plan going into it. And I think that there are a lot of people who really like episode 7 and 9, and there are people who really like episode 8, and there's not a ton of overlap. Yeah, there had to be some fan service, but I felt like JJ was really catering to a very specific part of the audience that didn't like episode 8, with retconning Rey's parentage, with completely getting rid of Rose. I don't know if you saw what they had said about what happened to the Rose character in episode 9 was they wanted to have her all with Leia, but those scenes didn't look right, so they cut her role way down. Even if that's true, that's a bad look. I mean, she was bullied off social media by racists, and then in the next movie, she's barely in it. That's a bad look.
Yeah, but you can't change art because of that. If what they're saying is true, you can't go the other way and say, we need to include her because then Twitter will be mad. I will say, I actually thought that the Leia scenes were pretty cool, but when you think about it, it was, wait, so what was the search for Luke about if Leia could just teach Rey? But, I believe Carrie Fisher was all from episode 7 outtakes, Al? Wasn't it completely episode 7?
Yes.
So it's all out of context. I had to work around it. I thought it was fine enough.
Did it make you think of that South Park episode when they had Chef after Isaac Hayes quit the show? That was all I could think of, where they're like, so what you're saying, Leia, is that we need to go to Exegol and defeat the Emperor, right? Yes. I mean, it wasn't that bad when Leia goes to call to her son. It's Maz Kanata who says, now Leia realizes what she must do to reach out to her son, and she just walks away. It wasn't great, but you can't really fault JJ. He had to work with what he had to work with. There were some other really sloppy things about the movie that bothered me. The two biggest ones that come to mind are the fact that Jannah is Lando's daughter, apparently, which you can only know from reading these interviews and picking up like a book. They mentioned that Lando had a daughter that was stolen by the First Order. And so that scene at the end where he's like, where are you from? And she's like, I'm not sure. And he says, let's find out. It's clearly alluding to the fact that she's his long lost daughter. But they never say that in the movie.
No, I thought it was alluding to the Disney Plus series coming in 2 years. That's what I thought. It was opening up a Disney Plus thing.
It absolutely is. You're 100% right. But then throw a line in there where Lando says, I hate the First Order because they stole my daughter. That's all you need. Just one line. Also, it was a huge dropping of the ball where Finn is going to talk to Rey and says, wait, before we die, I need to tell you something. And then later she's like, so what'd you want to tell me? And he says, I'll tell you later. And then 30 minutes later in the movie, Poe says, hey, what was that thing you were going to say to Rey? And he says, I'll tell you later. It's never addressed again. That is just bad script writing.
That's what happens when you lose your script.
That's a mistake. Like, again, in interviews, if you read them, you can find out, oh, well, what he wanted to say wasn't that he loved her, but it was that he's force sensitive.
Right.
Okay, cool. I get that he's force sensitive. There's lots of clues about that in these movies. Neat. But you can't just set that up and then not have it go anywhere. Finn had nothing to do with this movie. The way he's like chasing after Rey and screaming, Rey, while she's battling Kylo Ren, it's like, that's annoying. I get that it was a callback to episode 3 with Padme, who was there during the battle between Anakin and Obi-Wan. But I don't know. And that just didn't really sit right with me. I did like the parallel, though, that Anakin and Obi-Wan fought on lava and then Rey and Kylo Ren fought on water. I thought that was a nice mirror sort of reference to that.
It was a well-shot fight. One thing I do want to say that there's a lot of the internet that hated one thing about episode 9, and that was what's now known as force healing. And, you know, at first it's like, oh, groan. And we saw, you know, all these memes of like all the things in the other trilogies of like, oh, I'll just force heal you, Qui-Gon. I will say that at the very last part of episode 3, we learn that Qui-Gon had learned about what is now going to be known as Force Ghosts. And then Obi-Wan presumably spends between episode 3 and 4 learning this. So it's okay that there's new powers. And they kind of set up a little bit in episode 8 that there might be these books that are a lot of Jedi stuff that we didn't know about. But it just wasn't set up well enough. There should have been something where maybe Rey accidentally healed a little, like, you know, armadillo in episode 7 and didn't know it.
The force healing was set up in the episode of The Mandalorian that dropped right before episode 9. So I do think that was intentional. Also, there was the whole thing in episode 3. What does Sidious say to Anakin? He promises him that there is a way using the force to save people from dying. And that completely goes away. That goes nowhere in episode 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it does come back in episode 9 with Palpatine's granddaughter saving Vader's grandson. So that is interesting. The fact that you can actually do that. You can bring people back. Maybe when Emperor Palpatine said that to Anakin in that opera thing, it was true.
I just don't think they set it up earlier in the trilogy. I like that they might have tied it into their other Disney Plus things, but does Rey ever fail in this trilogy? She beats Kylo in the first episode. She and Kylo beat... Are those the Knights of Ren? Those guys, the red guys with Snoke?
No, those are the Praetorian Guards.
Okay, the Praetorian Guards. And then in
the
episode...
Knights of Ren are in episode 9.
And then in episode 9, those are the ones that Ren is able to get his lightsaber through the teleportation, kill them all.
Yes.
I didn't have a problem with any of those things, but I thought it would have been nice if she was able to fail a little and then the hero's journey. She should fail a little before she... succeeds, right?
I mean,
she failed back on wherever the hell Luke was, right? She failed in that when she got there, she destroyed everything. She had no way out. She couldn't bring back the X-wing, right?
She gets captured by the First Order in episode 7.
Yeah, but I'm talking about, like, Luke fails in episode 5. Anakin fails in episode 2. I mean, I'm talking about your 3-act play. The rebels all were, defeated at the end of episode 8. I just thought Rey's character, she kind of won again. I liked the character. I just wanted her to fail a little bit, maybe get her butt kicked a little bit in episode 8 so that she can overcome that in episode 9.
I get what you're saying. I sort of think that in 15, 20 years from now, people are going to look back and look more fondly at the prequels than the sequel trilogy. Just because whatever you think of the prequel trilogy, George Lucas went in there with a story he wanted to tell and he told it. And with episode 7, 8, 9, they went in there without a story that needed to be told. They just wanted to make more Star Wars movies because they wanted to make more money. And hey, look, I'm super guilty of giving them all the money for all of the new movies. I've seen episode 9 twice in the theater, brought the kids. I liked the movie a lot more when I saw it the second time, but I do wonder how it's going to be viewed, down the road, not just in the immediate aftermath.
I think down the road, people are going to like these episodes more than anything with Jar Jar Binks. I'm sorry. Unless you think that's a lovable character. I think these really do bring it to a close. But in terms of Rey failing, when we get back to that, she did fail, right? Because she failed with Leia's training. She did fail in it. She got her ass kicked in that whole scene where Leia's training her and she's going after everything and she's going through the forest, the jungle, whatever the hell it is. She's getting her ass beat by that.
Not enough. I'll say not enough. Like, had her powers in episode 7 or 8 killed Chewbacca, but I agree with you, Al. The prequels, for all the flaws, there was an intriguing story of espionage. A little skirmish on an outside thing on the far side of the galaxy is going to bring down the entire Senate. And I saw something online that said the prequels are a high school band playing Mozart's Ninth Symphony, while the sequels are the London Symphony Orchestra playing hot cross buns. Meaning, technically, episodes 7, 8, 9 were beautiful. The sound was fantastic. The special effects were great. But the story wasn't that great. They were kind of doing hot cross buns.
I think that's fair. And I still love Star Wars. The end of the movie got me. I was sobbing both times I saw it. When Chewbacca gets the medal, oh my God. And then when she goes back to Tatooine and I'm like, oh, the suns, she's going to see the suns and she sees the twin suns. And it gets me.
And the John Williams music right there.
Sure. Babu Frick is a phenomenal character. I love him. Whatever the next Star Wars movie is, I'll be there right away. I can't wait to go to Galaxy's Edge with the kids. The Mandalorian was so unbelievable. The season finale was epic. I mean, I have mixed feelings about episode 9, but I still love Star Wars and I always will. The Force will be with me always. But let's talk about Bad Boys.
Had you seen this film, Al?
I had not.
You never saw Bad Boys or Bad Boys 2?
No, the only Bad Boys movies I'd ever seen was when I used to come over to your apartment when you lived in the city. I want to say like the mid 2000s-ish, like 2003 to 5, give or take. And you always had Bad Boys 2 on TV, like all the time.
If I may quote Nick Frost's character from Hot Fuzz, you've never seen Bad Boys 2? Of course, you've heard of Jerry Bruckheimer, and this is a Jerry Bruckheimer Don Simpson film.
Yes.
And did you know who Don Simpson was?
I have.
He was his producing partner
Yes.
that had done Top Gun, Beverly Hills Cop, but unfortunately, Don Simpson was also I believe he died of drug overdose, I believe maybe a cocaine. And it was either like The Rock or Con Air or something like that, where they dedicate the film to the memory of Don Simpson. But regardless, this movie is about a pair of renegade, don't play by the rules Miami cops. Mike Lowry, played by Will Smith, and Marcus Burnett, played by Martin Lawrence. So when $100 million worth of heroin that was recently confiscated by the police is stolen from police station headquarters, Internal Affairs gives them 5 days to track down the drugs before they shut down the narcotics division. Things get even more complicated when Marcus has to masquerade as his partner Mike in order to gain the trust of another important murder witness played by Téa Leoni. And it all culminates in an explosive finale as the two detectives prove that it is in fact they who are the bad boys.
Oh, I get it.
Uh-huh.
So this had to have been a hit when it came out because they made a sequel.
Or you'd think, oh, it has to be a hit because it's Will Smith and I've heard of Bad Boys and this franchise, but this film was released on April 7th, 1995. Now remember, Independence Day is released in 1996. This was his first blockbuster. He had done 6 Degrees of Separation, but right now this was his first big blockbuster, like the guy from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air doing a film.
Martin Lawrence is top billed in this movie.
As he should be.
Yeah, he is top billed, and I read that actually he sought out Will Smith just because once he was on, they were doing the movie no matter what, but he actually sought him out.
It's hard to imagine, but Martin Lawrence was bigger. I mean, he had a show on Fox. Do you remember all the words to the theme song to that show?
I do. I had that
all
theme song
these years
memorized.
later, you remember all the lyrics? Can you sing us some of the song?
Sure. Ma'in.
And then the next line I think was
Ma'in.
and then it goes to
Ma'in.
That's right, yeah.
And even though you can't see me, you can imagine the dance I'm doing. It is exactly what you think I'm doing as a lame white guy doing that dance.
Yeah, and this film was number 1 when it opened on April 7th, 1995. It was number 1 actually for 2 weeks in a row, and it knocked out another film off number 1, a movie that we have reviewed. I'll give you a hint. Callahan Motor Company.
Tommy Boy? It knocked out Tommy?
Well, Tommy Boy had a good run itself.
It's Callahan Auto.
Callahan, yeah,
The
right.
best that Sandusky, Ohio has to offer.
That's right.
They didn't make motors, too.
Right.
And you know what was number 10 this week? It was in the top 10 for the 29th week. But it's not one of those Titanic kind of things that had been number 1 for a long time. This film really was always like 7, 8, and 9, but for 29 weeks.
In 1995.
Uh-huh. Here's a hint. It's the only time, I believe, that Al has accepted voiceover in a film we reviewed.
Oh, Shawshank Redemption.
That's right.
Interesting.
So, guess what the budget for this film was?
$25 million.
You're really close. It was $19 million.
I think it was Bruckheimer. He actually had to use his own vehicles. The Porsche in this movie is his own Porsche.
Nice.
As well as
Really?
in Bad Boys 2. That's his Ferrari. I think it's a 550 in most of the scenes. And then they actually switched to some rental, I guess, 575 or something. I don't even know what model that was, but I read that
You
basically...
don't?
Nah, sorry. When I first saw it, I thought it was a 360, but it wasn't a 360. It was a 550.
This $19 million budget film grossed $64 million domestically and $141 million worldwide. So you have the opening scene.
Right, which is Mike and Marcus get pulled over. Right away, they're just squabbling. And you sort of get the sense that these guys are friends, but they're friends who like to give each other shit.
Actually, I feel like that's very similar to what we did. I can distinctly remember pulling my car over when someone did something that pissed me off back in high school. I feel like this is the same exact thing. He pulled over his 911 because Marcus dropped a French fry in between the seats.
Yeah, I feel like you probably did that when I pissed you off, but it couldn't have been dropping a french fry because your car was a piece of shit back then.
Oh, yeah. I'm pretty sure I kicked somebody out of the car, but it wasn't for dropping anything on the floor.
No, it was me. I don't remember what I did, but it was definitely me.
Well, I think this first scene will show that there's something about these two guys. They have great chemistry. And I wouldn't even think, to be honest, Martin Lawrence would play a good cop. He was in another movie. You ever see Blue Streak?
Oh, yeah.
He plays like a fake
He
cop.
He plays the thief. He's a
Yeah,
he's a
thief.
cat burglar, basically.
Right, but he pretends he's a cop. But in this film, he works so well well with Will Smith. And so they basically make a big bust. And you learn that these are bad boy cops. And these are like Lethal Weapon kind of cops, but for the 90s. So there's $100 million worth of heroin that is confiscated, and it's put in a secure police vault. And then in an elaborate scene, the drugs are stolen from police headquarters.
How funny is that? They're in this secure vault. There's a random padlock around a length of chain in a prison bar cell, basically. It just seemed very odd to me. We had just a length of chain wrapped around bars in a cell, and this is where they're holding their $100 million worth of dope.
I will say that while I agree that it seems ridiculous there, I could see them just not expecting who's going to rob the police station. I think this really is one of those, it's the last place they'd think, because, I mean, that takes a lot of guts. So,
but they did that in Lethal Weapon.
They do?
Yeah, in Lethal Weapon, they rob the police station and they steal all the ammo out of the police station, all the guns.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I think it was Lethal Weapon 2.
Okay. All right, I'll take your word for that. And we meet the captain of the police department, who is Joe Pantoliano, who you never see as a good guy, let alone like the police captain. Like, I saw his name in the credits and I was like, ooh, I wonder what bad guy Joey Pants is going to be.
Right.
And then I find out he's the police captain. I was very surprised by that.
Yeah, at least he's a hothead, police captain, and he's got a great cop crew cut. So after this heist, the internal affairs from Miami PD comes in, and they suspect that it's an inside job, and they're basically, Joey Pants, Captain Howard, you have 5 days to figure out and recover the drugs, or we're shutting you down.
Right. So Mike, who's Will Smith's character, decides to check in on one of his informants, who is a call girl named Max.
A beautiful supermodel-like call girl named Max.
Yeah, she is very, very pretty. She is, however, a terrible actress. Every line of dialogue that she delivers is so horrifically wooden. I'm like, oh, I will look for people acting suspiciously. It was kind of painful to watch her act. But so she's going to help figure out where the drugs are.
And Max also brings one of her girlfriends over, played by Téa Leoni, who these days plays the very dignified, the President of the United States in Madam Secretary. I actually did remember that I had a kind of a crush on her in this film, but, I haven't seen her in this kind of film in a long time. We also didn't say yet, this is directed by Michael Bay, who would also direct for Jerry Bruckheimer many films, and she kind of plays the Megan Fox role in this.
Totally.
And with a caveat that Téa Leoni is a very talented actress, so even juxtaposing with Max, sometimes when you're in a scene with a great actress and a not so great actress.
Right. I do just want to point out something that you said where Max brings her best friend, Julie, who's Téa Leoni's character. But apparently Julie doesn't know that Max is a call girl. She says that to her madam or something. She's like, oh, just bring my friend. Oh, but she doesn't know I'm a call girl. Whatever. It's okay. Julie is completely surprised by the fact that they get there and the guy is like putting the moves on her. And she's like, wait, you're kind of creepy. Not realizing that he thinks she is a call girl. I feel like we just said the word call girl an awful lot. But then Max is killed when the head bad guy shows up, who is a French drug kingpin named Fouché, which I think is interesting because you don't see a lot of French drug kingpins in movies.
Yeah, there's something in Bad Boys and Bad Boys 2. The franchise usually has a very slick bad guy. So Max is killed, and Julie, of course, is a witness to this murder. So they're like, get her. And basically, Julie is able to escape.
Right.
And Julie is able to find her way to a phone where she calls and says, I'll only speak to Mike Lowry, because Max had always talked about this guy. And she said, if you're ever in trouble, talk to Mike Lowry. So at the time, Will Smith's character, Mike Lowry, they're not really able to find him. And now Julie calls the police station. She's like, I'm going to run. I'm going to flee. She's the only witness. So the chief is like, oh, okay, I got Mike Lowry right here. Captain Howard gives the phone to Martin Lawrence, who is Marcus. And Marcus pretends he's Lowry.
Right. Basically, this case of mistaken identity would have been avoided had Mike had a cell phone. They do say that they tried to page him and it didn't go through for whatever reason because he was busy following up a lead or something, so he wasn't reachable. A big part of this movie is that Marcus goes to see Julie and is pretending to be Mike, but he's also like horrible to her. He's like yelling at her, just treating this woman like crap because she's scared and defensive. Meanwhile, she just watched her best friend get murdered and he's a cop who's supposed to be protecting her.
You're supposed to understand that something off screen is that Julie's been told by Max, I have this guy friend who she's probably sleeping with. And she's like, this guy he is a fantastic looking guy and he is slick and he's got muscles and he dresses so well and he is so smooth with the ladies and that is Will Smith's character. And the joke is that Marcus is the complete opposite. We've already met his wife. He's a homebody. He's a family man. So he does not treat this beautiful Julie Taylor the way that Mike Lowry. I mean, Mike would probably treat a murder witness with kid gloves too, but Mike Lowry would also treat a beautiful woman much more smoothly. And I think it's part of the joke. And now we have Julie at Marcus's apartment. There's a great part where Julie's like, why do you have pictures of this other man all over your apartment? Now that is very funny because also these are, shirtless pictures of Will Smith. Yeah, very good looking. But then the jokes definitely pivot into the, like a gay jokes because she's like, why do you have all these pictures of this very good looking man all over your apartment? Maybe he's your lover. But then it becomes Martin Lawrence just like, hell no, absolutely not.
He says, hey, did you sleep in the bed? Do you feel the divots in the bed or like something like that? He's like, that's from all the fucking, basically.
My exact response was like, couldn't have been from all the gay fucking?
Right. Yes, it was weird and definitely homophobic. Also, though, why does Mike have all of these sexy pictures of himself in his apartment? I mean, James, you're a single guy living alone. You have pictures of yourself with other people in your apartment, but not a ton of pictures of you just like shirtless and looking sexy.
No, but I know people that do have those.
Really?
Yeah. And we're going to meet another character here, Chet the Doorman.
He reminds me 100% of Rob Schneider.
Yeah.
Yes, he looks like Rob Schneider's cousin, like, Dave Schneider. But it was one of these guys, he's funny in the fact that I remember in the theater, everyone laughing at Chet.
I mean, I could see that was pretty funny to a 16-year-old James. I could totally see that in the theater.
Right. Chet is there to kind of cut the tension. But I actually, with these two characters, I don't think you need a Chet, to be honest.
Also, there's no tension at all because we have this thing of internal affairs is going to shut them down after 5 days, but they are doing no police work. Mike and Marcus are spending all of their time bickering about like, oh, I don't want to pretend to be you. Oh, but I don't want to pretend to be you. But your life is stupid. But your life is stupider. And yeah, well, you're not married, so you don't have love in your life. Well, yeah, well, you are married, so you don't get to have sex. Like, that is a huge part of the middle of this movie. And I just couldn't help but thinking like, hey, isn't this a Michael Bay movie? Shouldn't there be like more explosions and stuff? There's just a lot of like bickering back and forth.
You're exactly right in one thing. As someone who had seen Bad Boys 1 and 2, I was wondering, where are the explosions? But Julie looks through some mugshots and she's able to identify some people. So they have another lead and they go to a club. I love the name of this club. Do you remember the name of this club?
Yeah, Aaron? Club Hell.
Club Hell.
Hold on, though. The way you just described it is better than they describe it in the movie. because they show up at this club and there's all of these like shots of the people in the club and dancing around and everything. And I was like, wait, why are they at this club? There's been no explanation about why they're there. Did I miss something? And then right as they're about to walk in, one of them, I forget which, if it's Mike or Marcus, says like, oh, well, that guy that Julie ID'd, we found out that he works here. So that's why we're here. And it was like such a throwaway line. I was like, they forgot to put that line in this movie. And then at the last second, someone remembered. It just felt like so tacked on. Because they've already established the club prior to that. And then like, oh, right, this is the reason we're going in. Now let's go into the club. Just as a reason for them to have like the big action set piece inside a club because it's a Michael Bay movie. While they're in Club Hell, Marcus gets into this big fight in the bathroom and he like knocks out two of these bad guys, then walks away, just leaves them there, doesn't place them under arrest, doesn't like tie them up, doesn't do anything. Then Julie shows up at the club and she tries to kill Fouché because Fouché killed her friend. Larry like knocks the gun down while she's shooting. Easily could have killed just a random
like
person
12
there.
other people like right there, yeah.
He doesn't knock it up to the ceiling. She's pointing this gun to the second floor balcony, basically.
Yeah.
And he knocks the gun down to the, like, innocent people.
Oh, yeah, and it goes off.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
If
Everyone's
anything-
fine in a crowded club. Yeah,
Right,
it's very
but that's
unbelievable.
a move. But you're supposed to raise her arm to the ceiling. So she, fires into the ceiling innocently.
So then the bad guys know that they're there. They start shooting the good guys. And Mike and Marcus run away. They leave. And Julie is like, why are you running away? You are cops. And I was thinking the exact same thing. I was like, yeah, shouldn't they like radio for backup and go after the bad guys instead of running away?
Yeah, for some reason they're outgunned. For some reason they plan this. You see the scene right before they're going where they basically load up. They put all their guns on them. They go. They don't tell anyone else, apparently. They go with no backup. They walk in there. They're going to take this all down by themselves. And then, you're right, all of a sudden they kick everyone's butt. And then they take one shot and they're like, we have to run away now. Actually, I just watched it the other night. I don't even know where that comes from.
They're not just bad boys. They're also just bad cops. Like, they're really, really bad at their job. Like, really bad. And not even necessarily, like, comically, like they're supposed to be bad at their job. They're supposed to be like, they're good at their job. Presumably they made this bust and got $100 million worth of heroin before the movie even started. But while we're watching them in this movie, they are just awful, awful police officers. They go into a bodega with Julie later on and they get into like this fight and they're like pulling guns on each other in front of the store clerk.
I remember this being from the trailer because Martin Lawrence is like, now why don't you just shut up, something, 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 and give me a pack of Skittles.
Bubblicious.
Bubblicious. And then Will Smith goes, and some Skittles. Can you imagine today if two cops had gone to some 7-Eleven, getting into some argument, the clerk is like, can you guys, take this outside? And they pull their guns on him and go, shut up, clerk. Oh, yeah.
Well,
and give me a Slurpee, too.
I'll give a little bit of a defense to them because the clerk pulled like a Desert Eagle on them at first, which is basically the biggest handgun that exists.
You're right, I forgot about that.
He saw that they had their guns underneath like vests, but they didn't look like cops. They looked like gangbangers. They didn't have any badges. They're not in uniform. There's nothing like them. And they're arguing like crazy between each other like they do the entire movie, which just breaks up all the fight scenes and explosions.
That's absolutely right.
I would actually say the opposite. I would say that the fight scenes actually break up the scenes of Mike and Marcus fighting. There's this whole thing where Marcus is convinced that Mike is sleeping with his wife and he like shows up at the house and then Marcus is like getting into a fight with Mike and they're like beating each other up. Meanwhile, Julie, who's their only witness in this case, is handcuffed to the car, or handcuffed in the car rather. And then there's like these two other cops that are like on their squad or whatever. They go and arrest the bad guys.
Yeah.
It's like the only time that like anyone makes an arrest. It's like, thank God there are some competent cops in this department. It's not Mike and Marcus. It's these other two.
In Marcus's defense, the reason why he went crazy and stir crazy was that he thought his partner was sleeping with his wife because he hadn't been sleeping with his wife for a while. Which actually, now that I'm thinking about it, is a recurring theme in Bad Boys 2, which we'll get to another time.
So there winds up being another gunfight, and Julie winds up being kidnapped. One thing leads to another, and they find out that Julie is being held at the airport. At the time, there's going to be this major drug buy by the South American drug kingpin who's wearing the head-to-toe white three-piece suit.
Right.
You know, with
With
the
hats.
white, like the bad guy in Indiana Jones 3, Last Crusade. And if I were to describe this scene, and I were a 1990s movie critic, I would describe this scene as high octane. It's a high octane thriller, says Gene Shalit.
This scene actually is high octane, literally, because isn't there like a lot of gasoline that explodes?
Yeah, we don't know the octane level of the gasoline. It could have been 87 or 93, you know, the Supreme stuff.
Right.
They also zoom in on the giant propane tank that exists in the hangar to do what? I don't know, except for explode.
No, it's for like if they want to have like a barbecue later.
Yeah, well, they barbecue everyone. Yeah,
That is true.
They do.
I don't understand why, but the drug dealers turn on each other. So Marcus and Larry, along with two other cops that kind of were, they were psychic, kind of giving them a little, ribbing them a little every time they messed up in front of the captain. Now they've joined up with them at the end. They crash into the hangar. The four of them are shooting everyone. There's explosions everywhere. Fouché kills the guy in the white suit. Hey, Leone is, she's free now. It's chaos.
And there is so much of Mike running in slow motion. Like, you don't see any of Marcus running in slow motion. And no offense, Martin Lawrence, Will Smith has got the better build, but there's just a lot of him holding his gun, his shirt's open, and he's just running, just in super slow-mo.
It was similar to the opening scene of Men in Black, where he's kind of shows his shirt is open, he's running against the alien, but there's no slow motion there. I know exactly what you mean. That you have to show that he's the slick cop and he's the Miami Vice Don Johnson one.
I think the slow motion comes into play because this is also around the time of Baywatch, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's a very 90s thing.
So
You're right.
it's a very 90s thing to have the slow motion, shots.
But everyone is dead except for our four principal characters and Fouché. They're all in two cars. And Fouché is driving away, and they're not going to let this guy get away with it. So they are chasing him. And, you don't really know why exactly, because you assume it's a huge open runway area. But for some reason, there's only a very narrow path in front of them. There's two huge blast walls with exactly a car width hole in this blast wall.
Yeah.
And they're both riding at like 100 miles per hour. And you would think you could just press on the brake and you could both go at the same, one behind each other or something. But for whatever reason, it's a race to get into this hole. It's not like they're driving away from an explosion behind them and only one could get out. But Martin Lawrence is driving and Julie's like, shut up and let him drive. And one of them crashes right into the wall. And one of them is healthy and not facially destroyed for a sequel. Guess which one crashes?
Right. Bad guy don't make it.
Bad guy doesn't make it through, but it turns out that 100 mile per hour crash directly into a concrete wall in a mini sports car doesn't kill you.
Well, I'm just going to give a little bit more detail to that. Now, we don't know 100% if it was a Cobra. It could have been a Cobra replica. But we do know that they described this as a 911. I think it was a 996 in the beginning.
It's a Porsche.
It's a Porsche, but there are different Porsches.
You're talking to a real car guy.
This
So
is the
is it
Porsche.
Porsche or Porsche? Because we were talking about this in Risky Business.
It's Porsche, but everyone says Porsche here. But it is a 911 Turbo. And they do give the specs 0 to 60, 4 seconds, no cup holder, yada, yada, yada. But in the end, he does lose control, Fouché, of his Cobra or Cobra replica and sideswipes it into the concrete barrier. That's at the end of the goddamn runway. And God help us all if we ever take a flight that's coming in and there's a concrete barrier at the end of the runway. That's really not meant to be there. By the way, standing the test of time, it is interesting that all the planes we see there are like turboprop planes from like Indiana Jones time.
Yeah, right. They have propellers and stuff.
I mean, in 1995, we had planes that didn't have giant propellers on them.
Exactly.
I don't know why that was in this movie.
So Fouché is not dead because the end of the film here really has... This is shot for shot the end of Lethal Weapon 1. Basically, Mike Lowry, Will Smith, is really pissed off at Fouché for killing his friend Max. And so he puts the gun right at him, and then Marcus does the whole, it's not worth it, man. He's not worth it. So then he agrees, you're right, he's not. But as their back is turned, he gets a hold of a gun, so now the cops aren't going to be cold-blooded murderers. Now it's... we can kill him legally.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's exactly the same that happens Lethal Weapon. They turn around, all of a sudden, randomly, the criminal once again has a hidden gun, pulls it out from his back, goes to shoot him, and the cop turns around and drills him. Justified homicide right there. The good guy wins, bad guy dies. Everything's wrapped up in a neat bow.
Marcus is going home to see his wife.
And he leaves Mike and Julie handcuffed together so that they can go home and have sex. I guess that's supposed to be a nice thing Marcus is doing for his friend, to handcuff him to a woman who he thinks wants to have sex with him. Whatever. Aaron, you are a very special guest. What about Bad Boys does and does not stand the test of time?
Honestly, I feel like the whole movie stands the test of time, except for a couple little tidbits that we could lose. And you gloss over it if you're engrossed in the movie and you enjoy things blowing up. It doesn't matter to you.
What are those things?
The pagers don't exist any longer.
Right.
The giant, computers that exist in the movie, those don't exist anymore. Corded phones. And we didn't talk about Michael Imperioli, who, we all love from The Sopranos, and he plays a nice role in this. Overall, I think it stands the test of time. Just a few idiosyncrasies, which are just related to technology, which I feel like any movie today, if you watch it 20 years later, we're all going to see that. It's always going to be, the next technological advance for us. But the true plot of good guys win out, lots of explosions, lots of car chases for everyone that loves him. It works for me every time.
What did you think, Al? This is your first time seeing this film. So what did you think? Did 1995's Bad Boys stand the test of time?
Absolutely fucking not. No, this movie is complete garbage. It's like not even a question. I'm not surprised that you said yes, Aaron, because we're friends. We've been friends since like probably around this time the movie came out. I know you like Michael Bay movies. This was his first movie that he directed, by the way. He directed music videos before. This is the first feature movie that he directed.
I wonder if he's the first of that 90s fad of music video directors becoming big-time directors. Yeah, Brett Ratner and Mick G and Spike Jonze. And I wonder if he was the first big one.
I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that this movie really sucks. It's so boring. Like, even the things that you expect from a Michael Bay movie, like the action and the explosions and all that, there's not that much of that stuff in this movie. There's just so much of this, like, mistaken identity of, like, Marcus is Mike, but Mike is Marcus. Guffaw, guffaw. It's not that funny. I mean, the whole premise of it is, like, Mike is single and Marcus is married. They're different. You and I make those jokes, James, on the podcast sometimes, but like we'll make that joke, I don't know, once every couple of episodes. The joke will be like 10 seconds. This is like 2 hours of that in one movie. It's an awful lot. The cops are stupid. They pull their guns on everyone. Even Michael Imperioli's character, they're like pulling their guns and threatening to kill him. Like, he's an informant. He's giving them information.
Only after they pull their guns on him.
I mean, I guess. There's no stakes in the movie. The 5-day deadline doesn't really
that's
matter.
Completely lost on me. I think we all heard about that. In the beginning, the IA comes in, they give them a deadline. We hear the deadline about how long it's going to take for the drugs to be cooked, and he needs it in 2 days. But the 5-day deadline just randomly, is thrown into us, and it's completely lost, I think, on most viewers.
Yeah. I mean, there's really not a lot of good stuff in this movie. I did laugh at one point when one of the bad guys calls another bad guy a knucklehead because he was like going to smoke in the truck that was like filled with ether or something. I call my kids knuckleheads sometimes, so that just made me laugh. But this movie is hot garbage. I did not like it. So, no, this does not stand the test of time. James, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Because I know you can enjoy a Michael Bay movie.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to sit down and enjoy a Michael Bay movie because there's a lot of fun Michael Bay stuff in this. The two of them, they have great chemistry. We talked about this already. Téa Leoni's great. I think the cast is fantastic in this film. You have 4 professional actors as the leads. Lawrence, Smith, Pantoliano, and Leone. They're all great. There was some fun stuff in this movie that I think was important for the career trajectory of Will Smith. This film was the right thing at this moment. I remember another scene from the trailer. We skipped this part in the talking about today, but there's this thing that in the 90s, you remember when African-American stand-up comedians would do the white person voice. So there's one point when they walk in this house and they go, "It's okay, ma'am, we're Negroes." And then Martin Lawrence in his white person impression goes, "Can I borrow some brown sugar, please?" That's 90s racial humor that everyone can kind of laugh at. But that's actually something I'd forgotten about this film. There's a lot more comedy in this film than explosions that I remembered. And I have to say that the Mixed Identity Three's Company episode that's in the middle of this movie is not that funny. And I didn't remember it, and I really didn't care for it. But just surprisingly, there was only like one big explosion scene at the end. The other shootouts were surprisingly small scale, and I was also very surprised at how dark the film was. It's the second film that is this beautiful Miami film. The first film is much darker.
Yeah, it's mostly at night, and the big explosion, I agree, are with that chase scene away from the club when they're exploding the ether everywhere. But otherwise, it's pretty dark as well.
Whoever is cinematographer, I think, is very good. The Rock and even Transformers films are shot well. Very good colors, but not this one. One more thing I liked about this film, and that's the theme music. Not just the theme music, I mean the score. Dun, 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 dun. I thought it was a good theme music. But one thing that definitely is fun is that it's now known more from the theme song of the that show that's been on for 30 years, Cops. How does that song go again?
Bad boys, what you gonna do?
What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? But all this, what does it come down to for me? We have 1 vote yes, 1 vote for no. And I agree with you in a sense, Aaron, that it's a Michael Bay film. I'm not looking for cinema. I'm looking for a Michael Bay film. The only thing for me is this film wasn't as Michael Bay-ish as I thought. And this one for me doesn't stand up. I don't think you need to see this one. It's a fun film. If you're a Michael Bay completist, see it.
Oh my God. If you're a Michael Bay completist, get a better hobby. I mean, go and do some charity work. Watch other movies. Rewatch every episode of Friends or The Office on Netflix. Literally do anything else with your time.
Okay, if you're a Will Smith fan, this is a fun Will Smith film. It's a fun Martin Lawrence film. It's not a great Bad Boys film, even though there's only been 2. But for me, it's a no on Bad Boys. Aaron, congratulations on your first Test of Time podcast recording.
I appreciate the invite. I just hope you guys give Michael Bay a little bit of a break because this was his first film. Hopefully you like the future films that he directs.
I gave him a break. I said it was okay.
This was $19 million budget, and every other film that he's made has been mostly in the hundreds of millions.
I'll tell you right now, the budget for Bad Boys 2, $130 million. Okay? That's all I'm going to say, and we'll end it at that.
So we'll see about Bad Boys 2 next week. Aaron, you'll be back?
I'll be back.
Nice. So join us for that. Don't forget to follow us on social media. We are at Test of Time Pod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We want to hear your thoughts on Bad Boys and Michael Bay and Cars. Do you know as much about Cars as Aaron does? No one does. But we'll see you next week, everybody.